I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 6:03 on October 12th, 2015, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and with our Assistant City Attorney, Jennifer Farrell. Would you like to lead us, please? Next is the roll call, and will Ms. Luna Reynosa assist us with the roll call, please?
Yes, please let the record reflect that all commissioners are present.
We will move on to approval of the minutes of the regular Planning Commission meeting of September 28th, 2015. Is there any discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to move the minutes.
All right. The motion has been made by Commissioner Murphy. Is there a second?
I second it.
Commissioner McCann has seconded. Please register your votes. Looks like we have 2 votes pending.
If you want yea or nay.
All right, there we go. That item passes 5-0. We'll move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission during the public comment section or on an agenda item is asked to complete a request to speak form available at the door. The completed form is to be submitted to the Planning Commission Secretary prior to an individual being heard by the Planning Commission. Any person wishing to address the Planning Commission on a subject other than those scheduled on the agenda is requested to do so at this time. In order to conduct a timely meeting, there will be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 15 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. State law prohibits the Planning Commission from taking any action on a specific item unless it appears on the posted agenda. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay. We will move on to the consent calendar. We have item 2, a referral of coastal development permit to the City Council. Do we have any requests to speak for those? All right. Does anyone from staff or the Planning Commission want to pull the item, or do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve it as noted.
All right. The Vice Chair has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And Commissioner Claus has seconded. Please register your votes. And that motion for the consent calendar passes 5-0. We'll move on to public hearings, and we have item 3 for tentative parcel map, TPM 15-0001, and coastal development permit, CDP 15-0006, to allow the development of 3 detached residential units on a currently vacant parcel within the Dana Point specific plan area and located at 24501 Santa Clara Avenue. Is there a staff report on this?
Yes, and Evan Lingen, John Tilton.
Since I live quite close to the property.
All right. Well, let the record reflect that Commissioner Claus is recusing herself due to her proximity. Residence is within the 500
Don't forget me.
feet.
Well, we did that once.
And once Commissioner Claus exits the chambers, then we will begin once again. All right. So Commissioner Claus has left, and we can begin our staff report.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners. This is Simon Cora. She's a staff report. She's not able to be here tonight, so I'll be presenting the item. This project requires a tentative parcel map for condominiums for 3 separate homes on a single lot. This is zoned in the Dana Point Specific Plan area, and this particular property, as all other properties along Santa Clara on this side of Santa Clara, are in a multifamily zone. There are some multifamily developments also up and down the street. It also requires a coastal development permit because the development is within the coastal zone and within 300 feet, in fact, of a coastal bluff, although not on a coastal bluff. Again, it's while each one it looks like a single-family home, because it's all on one lot, it's considered multifamily development. Again, the location is at the corner of Amber Lantern and Santa Clara Avenue. You might recall this vacant lot. It's been vacant for quite as long as I can remember. It is behind the where the Schwack is, across the alley. We have some views here of the vacant lot looking towards the site. This is back looking towards Town Center. It's just outside of the Town Center planning area. More views of the area in Santa Clara. There's a multifamily condominium project across the street from across Amber Lantern. Here's an aerial map of the site. Again, there will be 3 homes. The units are designated as Unit A, B, and C. A and B have their garages facing Santa Clara, and Unit C, which is slightly larger at 2341 square feet, and that's garages would be accessed off of the alley. The floor plans, they are 2-story units. Units A and B are identical square footage, and the floor plans are mirrors, essentially, of each other. On the right, you'll see the garage, and the pedestrian entry, the front door, would be off of Amber Lantern. You've got your primary living area on the ground floor, and then on the upper floor, you've got 3 bedrooms and a bonus room. And then the stairway goes up from there to a roof deck. Units A and B have roof decks. Unit C does not. Here's some elevations of Unit A. The design is derivative of kind of a Spanish Mediterranean architecture, some with flat roofs, also some sloped roof, which would have real clay tile. There are wood rafters and corner windows. Essentially, the materials are very simple with white, smooth stucco, and dark wood trim. Unit B, again, quite similar. There's some sections here just showing a cross-section of each home with the roof deck on top, then the 2 floors with the garage below. You'll see the floor plan for Unit C, which is somewhat unique. But again, the primary living area on the ground floor with bedrooms on the 2nd floor. And then there is a deck off of the bonus room, which would be not on the roof, but on the 2nd floor. And then there's a sloping roof with tile. Here's some elevations. Elevation from the alley on the top left, and then on the right side, upper right, those show the elevations as viewed from Amber Lantern. Again, a cross section showing sloped roof, and then the 2 floors. Here's some additional site elevations. The top elevation is actually a perspective showing looking from the corner of Santa Clara and Amber Lantern. And then the bottom left, or the middle left, show the elevation of 2 garages from Santa Clara. And on the right, in the middle there, the two elevations facing Amber Lantern. Here's a colored elevation showing the view from Amber Lantern. And then on the bottom, showing essentially from the corner of Amber Lantern and Santa Clara. I'm sure the colors on my screen don't look very good here. Actually, apologize for that. Look quite a different, depending on which computer screen you're looking at. But the roof is terracotta clay tile, and the stucco is an off-white, and then all the trim is essentially a dark brown wood grain type stain. Very simple Spanish, typical Spanish revival color scheme. Again, it's two actions need to be, two items would be recommended to be approved. The tentative parcel map for the condominium, so they can be sold separately, and then the coastal development permit essentially for all of the development. Recommendation is that the Planning Commission approve the tentative parcel map as well as the coastal development permit. We've not received any correspondence from any of the neighbors that I'm aware of, and that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Vice Chair?
Thank you. A couple quick questions. As it relates to the driveways, is there a reason that we don't count the parking spaces in the driveways? Or show them at least?
Well, driveways are required to be long enough to accommodate a
Okay.
car, but they don't technically count as required parking.
Okay, gotcha. So when I look at Unit C, and we have guest parking spaces that are next to Unit C,
Let's see here.
off the alley,
Right?
is the assumption those are general guest parking for any of the 3 units then?
That's correct. And one slight difference between the Dana Point specific plan regulations and the other areas of Dana Point is that guest parking in this area are not required for multifamily, amazingly,
Okay.
but they are providing it at any rate.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's a reference in condition 8 to utility access off of Del Prado versus PCH. I'm assuming this is kind of a generic condition for this area?
Yes.
Okay. I think that was it. I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Commissioner McCann?
Thank you. A few quick questions. There's a final map that needs to record on this, correct?
That's correct.
I didn't see a condition on when and where we would like that final map, at what stage would we like it to be recorded. So there's conditions about prior to submittal for a final map, prior to approval of a final map, but then I don't see one that says where we want that to be approved by. So do we want it approved prior to a building permit or prior to a final, or?
Well, there is, condition number 18 does say that the final map needs to be submitted to the County of Orange for review and approval. I mean, it is a given that the final map would have to be recorded prior to any sale of the units.
Right, it hasn't been our practice to require are you talking about just for the final map or for the condo map?
Well, what's the difference?
Well,
Is it going to be a final
we-
parcel map?
We typically haven't required, we've left it up to the property owner's discretion. Sometimes property owners want to maintain these properties as income properties for a number of years, and they just want the option to convert them into condos in the future. So they do all the steps up front, but don't actually move forward with that for some time. And it's been our practice to allow that flexibility. So we haven't typically conditioned when the final map has to be recorded.
Okay. Okay. What's the width of the alley? Is it 20 feet? I see a 10-foot dimension.
It is 20 feet.
Okay, so and do we feel that the turning radius is appropriate to get into the driveway?
Yes. They-
Okay,
You can count the alley as part of your backup. You can count the full width of the alley. So
okay,
with that, they have the minimum required.
okay. And I assume, Unit C seems like the tightest. I assume all setbacks are met there. It looks like there's a different setback for the garage and deck versus the main side yard setback. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
All setbacks are met?
Yes,
Setback
yes,
requirements are met
definitely.
on C?
Yes, they all comply.
Okay. And do we need to give a separate and special approval for the roof deck?
Not,
Or it's all part of the same package?
that's true.
Okay.
Now, if this wasn't in the Dana Point specific plan, it would be covered under the Dana Point zoning code. In those cases, then a site development permit is required for roof decks. Because this is in the Dana Point specific plan, there's no separate approval required.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. With the 2 parking spots that are next to Unit C, they back up, they're right there at the alley, and then across the alley is a cleaners and
Right.
is there any stipulations or thought about somehow being able to provide those 2 parking spots without people using them from, going to a restaurant on the other side of the street or?
There's no specific requirement for that, but it's clearly private property. I suspect that we'd let the owner, if that became a problem, they could certainly put up a sign that just says private parking.
The owner can do that today, but then if you all remember the parking management plan, the parking item that came before you all, I don't know, a month or so ago at this point, that part of the recommendation was for a parking benefit district to be considered for that area. And so if this property owner was interested and the neighbors were interested, it would be able to be put into that. Wait, this is though, I'm sorry, a private parking. So I'm sorry, that would be for on-street parking. So John's answer was what it would be is that they would have to post and enforce that themselves.
Okay, so that's self-enforcement then. Okay. And just a little information on the rooftop decks. Looking at the renderings, I can see the roofs on the AB are flat.
Yes.
How much of the rooftop is the deck? And where on the rooftop is the deck?
If you look on the second page of the plans, the first drawing there, which is labeled number 3, roof,
The drawing of the actual rendering with the,
no, just the roof plan on
just,
the second page.
let's see. Yeah. Okay, yes. Oh, that's the footprint then.
Yeah, that shows the whole roof, and only a relatively small portion of the roof. It's 255 square feet.
Okay, and what's the height of the wall there?
It would be 42 inches, by minimum required by code.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
My question is a follow-up to Commissioner Murphy's. That 4-foot wall on the deck, is that part of the 28 height? It's within that?
Yes.
Okay. That's all my questions. I'll open up the public hearing, and do we have any requests to speak? We have one request to speak. It looks like Kate, and I want to say Bottens. Please, you'll have to come up to the podium. We're recorded, so we have to have everyone come to the microphone, state your name and city of residence.
Kate Botting. I'm a resident in the condos next door, and I just have a question in terms of the levels of the lots. This one is quite a bit higher than the one where my residence is located. I want to understand how much this new construction is going to kind of tower and block sunlight and view to kind of the three condos right next door. So is there going to be any kind of grading down of this new lot to put it at a more equal level to the one next door?
Well, why don't you give us all your questions, and then we'll have staff answer them. Because
Okay.
it's not a question and answer
Oh, I'm
period
sorry.
per se. So just, what are all your questions and concerns?
Those are it. I just want to make sure how much this is going to be an intrusion on residents next door.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other people that want to speak on this matter? Sir, do you wanted to speak?
Yes.
Okay. State your name and city of residence. Thank you. And you are Richard
Yeah,
Price?
I'm Richard Price. I'm the landscape architect on the project. Unfortunately, the architect became ill and had to go to the hospital today. So he is not here. So I'm it, okay, as far as questions. Couple things I wanted to note. Oh, by the way, I'm Richard Price, okay. Is the project's in compliance with all the items, all the city requirements. And we've also cooperated with city staff. They've been great to work with. And we've basically, I think, worked with them to work out any bugs that we had in the design or any issues that came up. The project has a great feel to it. It's a modern Spanish colonial design, has clean lines. It should fit well with the neighborhood. We do have some trees along the property line. The woman was talking about what's happening. We are actually kind of separating. Actually, the building next to it is quite massive. So what we thought we'd do is put some trees down the property line and help screen that property line. A couple benefits the project has. It has a wide 15-foot area along the front street that the city plants the trees, we plant the landscaping, we put in a dry stream, cobbles, succulents, and it's quite a large area. You know, it's over 20% of the site, so it's a big area. The site landscape is somewhere over 40% of the site, including the rear yards. It's probably 45% in that range. There was a discussion about that rooftop. It's big. It's 12 by 14. It's not that large. It's a small space. Let me see what else I've got in here. The water budget, we met that. You know, the state water requirements. The planting on the project is low to moderate watering, in some cases low. By the way, we far exceeded the requirements. We're doing a drip irrigation system on the project. Let's see what else. The private yards have walls. They're enclosed, and so, but they have vines and espaliers on the walls. We have 20 trees on site. Okay, that's not off-site, that's on-site. So some of those are small, they're screening walls, they're in a design that works with the project, not against it. And so it is gonna have a nice sense of place to it with the architecture and landscaping. So, any questions to me?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay?
I will close the public hearing and bring it back to possibly staff that could address Ms. Spotting's question or concern.
The property that is, if you're standing on the sidewalk at Santa Clara looking directly at the site, I assume she was talking about the development to the right. And the street slopes downward as you're going east. And so that property is approximately 5 feet below this property. There's a retaining wall separating the two, and if you look at the, in your report, the attached photographs, you'll see there's a wall there separating that.
Can we put it on the screen at all?
Yeah,
If it's
let's
available.
see here. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Could you go to the beginning? Very beginning. Our system's slow. Keep going. Okay, right there. So you can see how that's a two-story structure, that multifamily. And you can't, because of the wall and also because that site's sunken relative to this property, you can't see the first floor. So that site is about 5 feet below the proposed site. And so the proposed building is 25 feet. So if there's, the differential would be 30 feet to the top of the roof from their ground would be 30 feet. Although from the proposed site, the height is 25 feet. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but hopefully it does. There is, in this zone, the maximum height limit is actually 35 feet. The project's proposed at 25 feet.
I didn't understand that last part. What's 25 feet?
The height of the proposed structure is
Okay.
25.
25. All right. Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commissioners for any comments. You want to start? Commissioner McCann?
I guess the only thing I'm still a little bit unclear on is this recorded parcel map issue. I understand if they want to retain them as rentals, they certainly could, although they could as 3 separate parcels. So would they be allowed to come in and apply for, without applying for the parcel map, apply for the 3 detached structures? I mean, do they go hand in hand?
Well, it's multifamily zoning, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they do not, one is not dependent on the other, really. They could do it separately. You could come in here without a parcel map and ask for 3 separate homes, which would essentially be apartments.
Okay. Okay.
It's different than the situation we had a few meetings ago where in order to comply with the zoning, there needed to be a separation of parcels. This is a different situation from that, in that, as John just mentioned, you could come and build 3 separate units on this one parcel and it could stay as one parcel.
Okay, so if they did that, if they didn't go forward with the parcel map, but they did, of course, build the structures, would CC&Rs get recorded
No.
against the, okay,
No.
okay, thank you.
It would just be rental units.
Okay, so, given that, as far as my comments, I think I like the project. I'm in support of the project. I think it's a tough little site. I think they might have problems on the keeping people out of those 2 spaces on the alley. But Other than that, I'll be supportive of the project.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'll agree with Commissioner McCann. I do, in reference to the comments about the topography, if you look at both sides in the alley, I mean, they're chasing the grade on both sides, so you've got really three sides where you've fixed grades, unless you dug a hole here and ended up, essentially creating a ditch. I don't see how this project could get any lower than what they've proposed. So I don't have any concerns there relative to the zoning and how they've set these lots. There's some pretty big open spaces in between the homes. And I do like the design. I appreciate the details that we saw, and I'm in total support of the project.
Commissioner Murphy?
I too like the design very much. I like what I saw in the renderings. In walking the parcel, I was surprised that the parcel is so long. I couldn't tell, from the pictures. And that's a good, healthy piece of land, I guess, for that area. I don't know. I have no comparison. But noting that across Amber there are 3-story structures, and on the side we've been talking about, those are at least 2-story structures. I'm in favor of the plan. I particularly like the environmentally sensitive ideas about the trees and the foliage, because on that street, all the way down, going south, I guess it would be, there are big trees. And we'd like to, kind of see maybe that would be replicated in this plan. So I like it.
All right, thank you. I too am in favor of the project. It meets the side setbacks. It's got low lot coverage at 42% rather than 60%, so they could have really, maxed out the building. And they're below maximum height. And I appreciate the articulation on the facade because I didn't want something that looked like a box. At least there's, some differentiation on the facade. And I have no problems with the tentative parcel map. I know a lot of buildings often start out like that, and it sometimes takes a long time before they can actually, make it into a condominium project. So those are my comments. If there's a motion, I guess we need 2 of them, right, for the tract map as well as the.
You can do it either way, either as one motion or as 2 separate motions.
Okay. Commissioner McCann?
I move that we approve tentative parcel map TPM 15-0001 and coastal development permit CDP 15-0006 to allow the development of 3 detached residential units on a currently vacant parcel within the Dana Point specific plan area at 24501 Santa Clara Avenue.
All right, so Commissioner McCann has made the motion and
I'll second that.
Vice Chair has seconded. Please register your votes. And that motion passes 4-0 with Liz Claus, who has recused herself. And speaking of Commissioner Claus, we need to bring her back in. So don't want to forget about her. And where am I? All right, so let the record reflect that at 6:37, Commissioner Claus has returned to our chambers, and we will move on to item 4, Coastal Development Permit CDP 15-0007 to allow expansion of an existing single-family dwelling and attached garage on a coastal bluff within the residential single-family 4 RSF4 zoning district at 37 Monarch Bay Drive. Is there a staff report on item 4?
Yes, and this time our resident staff reporter, Evan Langen, will give the staff report.
Thank you. And good evening again, Commissioners. On your screen is the presentation for this item. As you mentioned, a coastal development permit to allow additions to an existing single-family dwelling on a coastal bluff. The property is located in the Monarch Bay Homeowners Association. That's a built-out community of exclusively single-family dwellings. The property contains a coastal bluff, a designation that carries with it very specific development and design standards, some of which I'll touch on in the course of my presentation. The property contains a single-family dwelling built in the 1960s and comprising about 4,000 square feet. Again, the scope of work is to add square footage to that. The trigger, incidentally, for the coastal development permit is that new square footage, specifically a 10% or greater expansion in the existing square footage of the home. A couple of additional aerial shots, and you can see the part of the coastal bluff there in the image on the bottom left. And, pardon me, okay, there we go. The site plan. You're looking at the site plan for our project. But first, again, back to the coastal bluff. The blue line is the delineated edge of the coastal bluff. That's the point where the property goes from being relatively flat to beginning a precipitous drop down to the Pacific Ocean below. The red line is the delineated setback from the edge of that coastal bluff. To come up with that setback, that minimum distance for all structures from the edge of the coastal bluff, a number of different factors are looked at in the course of the geotechnical analysis, including projected erosion of the bluff over the next 50 years, the factor of safety line for the property, and where the property goes from grossly stable to less so, among others. And so you come up with a total setback, as it's called. There's a minimum or a default setback for properties, all coastal bluff properties in the city. Differs a little bit depending on where you are, but then that number can be reduced down to a minimum setback of 25 feet, or in the case of our property here, whatever the geotechnical analysis comes up with. So in the case of the subject property, its unique qualities, 28 feet was determined to be the total and appropriate setback for the property. Now you'll notice a part of the home projects closer to the bluff, goes beyond that 28-foot setback. Of course, again, existing home, non-conforming elements can remain, provided that they aren't altered or removed to such an extent that they would qualify as demolition. In that case, of course, the home would have to be brought into compliance. No part of the improvements to the home are projected to go into the setback, nor are foundation improvements proposed to those parts of the home that go currently beyond the setback. The green boxes, green polygons there, those are areas of new square footage that are proposed, and as is the yellowish, tannish box there. So to walk through those improvements specifically, a new garage, a little more than 600 square feet, that's seen at the top right of the floor plan. Again, 3-car garage. There is a new recording studio that's proposed. You can see that in the floor plan. I'm sorry, my cursor isn't behaving. Here you go. That would be the studio, and you can also see that in section. That's the image at the bottom of your screen. There are new accessory rooms, all of which wrap a courtyard. The footprint of the building remains more or less the same, save for where it increases in size toward the street. That's the garage, again, at the right. Otherwise, the remainder of the interior of the home would see a complete remodel. So new walls, reapportioning of rooms, but the total bedroom count would remain the same at 4, and the structure is and would remain a single story. Now, that said, the height of the building would increase, but through something of a technicality. Our zoning code says that to measure building height, you look at a baseline that is either the lower of finished or natural grade. So either the existing earth or the grade that you create. We take the lower of that as the starting point for measuring building height. In the case of our home, we're creating a new low point with the studio. The finished floor of the studio would drop about 5 feet or sit about 5 feet lower than the rest of the home. And so because we have a new low point to the property or to the footprint of the building, that becomes our starting point for the house, and we measure up from there. So the home will increase in height per the standards of the zoning code, but in a practical sense, from all sides of the building, from neighboring properties, nothing changes. It's still the existing height, the visible height, would remain the same at about 16 feet. Elevations of the exterior of the building would see new materials, primarily in the front of the structure with new stone veneer, although new stucco would be placed all around the building. The rear elevation, you can see there at the bottom. And then on to landscaping. I started by saying the coastal bluffs carry very specific requirements. Most notable, perhaps, is the landscaping that's permitted within that setback from edge of bluff. So the home, the property, as it currently sits, contains a bit of non-conforming landscaping, you could say, and some existing irrigation. As part of this CDP, all of that irrigation, again within the setback, would be removed, and a whole new plant palette would be proposed. All of the plants would be native to California, drought tolerant, and again, no new irrigation would be permitted. In addition, landscaping throughout the property, along with some new outdoor amenities like a bocce ball court and others, all of that located in the front yard here. A new driveway, a wholesale redoing of the surface of the property. Again, all of that complies with code, as does the rest of the home for that matter. Setbacks, the height as I mentioned before, lot coverage, et cetera, all the numbers are met. And so as the findings can be made to support the CDP, or the request to approve the CDP, staff does just that. Recommend you approve it as proposed. Thank you.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Go ahead. Oh, Commissioner Claus.
About the hardscape? 50% of the area will be hardscape?
That's 50% of the area of the setback from the edge of bluff is permitted to be hardscape.
Okay. And what kind of hardscape are they going to use?
That primarily is going to be wood planks. So there is
Wood
let's
planks?
See. Yeah, there is a pathway that I've somewhat blocked with the green boxes there, but oops.
Okay.
There's an existing pathway that traverses the rear yard. You can see a little bit of course, here. That material, which I believe is just like railroad ties and so forth, that'll be removed and replaced with a new wood pathway of sorts. They're floating wood beams. They wouldn't have wouldn't have footings, I should say, into the earth. They would just sit on top of the earth. But that's the majority of the hardscape that you see. The remainder of it really is landscaping and a handful of planter boxes.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCann.
Thank you. So with respect to irrigation, it says no new irrigation is allowed, but you also referenced existing irrigation. So are the new native drought-tolerant plants going to be irrigated with the old irrigation?
Good question. The old irrigation comes out, no new is allowed, and for new plantings, it all has to be hand-watered to be established. So the old irrigation comes out first, it would be replanted, and as part of that, to establish those plants, it would all be hand-watered.
Okay. Thank you. And then, so I understand that the height that we're going down, the height will still be in compliant with the max height allowed?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the potential maximum height would be 28 feet and 2 stories. So the home remains 1 story. The overall height would be about 22 feet from the finished floor of the recording studio. From grade to the top, it remains as it is today, which is about 16 feet.
Thank you. That's my comments.
Vice Chair?
I have no questions.
All right. Commissioner Murphy?
Just a question under environmental. Where it says pursuant to the California Environment, well, CEQA, the project is found to be categorically exempt per section 15301, class 1, existing facilities, in that the project proposes nominal additions to an existing single-family dwelling. What is meant by nominal? As it pertains to this.
As it pertains to the
I don't
project,
mean
it's,
just generally, but as it pertains to this.
There's a square footage maximum that would kick you over into, I mean, no longer being nominal, but essentially it's about less than 50% of the existing square footage of the home. So the 2,300 square feet that's being proposed roughly is less than that threshold. So it's a bit of semantics, but it also does fall under the threshold per CEQA to be considered a totally new home. And even if it was a brand new home, I should point out too that new single-family dwellings are categorically exempt from CEQA too. So it would just trigger it. It's a different kind of exemption than it could be.
Okay.
And just to add to that, because it'll come up in the future as well, really CEQA is looking at the certain, physical environmental impacts, and new development often triggers, additional traffic and noise, air quality issues. But this is already an existing single-family home, and the additional impact to the environment by adding this square footage isn't really going to increase traffic, noise, air quality, et cetera. So just from a more kind of common sense standpoint, you can understand where some of these exemptions come from.
Yes. Thank you. Let's see if I had. No, that's the only question I had.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Are there?
Forgive
any-
me, Commissioner, may I make one more point? I
Oh,
neglected
sure.
to mention, we've had one item of correspondence on this project, for this project. It came in late this afternoon. It's from a sound, I say engineer, but at least a gentleman who owns a sound company, a home theater design and so forth. On behalf of the applicant, the letter essentially states that the studio would be, the sound from the studio would be muffled to a great extent. We just wanted to make clear that sound wouldn't radiate out from the building, perhaps onto other properties and so forth. It's been specifically designed to contain sound. So forgive me, I should have mentioned that in my, my initial presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll open the public hearing, and we have Mr. Andrade.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm the project architect, Stan Andrade. My residence is Dana Point. I just wanted to be here to answer any questions. This property actually got an approval for a previous CDP, if you may recall, for a brand new home that was going to be scraped. The owners decided that that was a little ambitious, so they engaged us to do a remodel. A lot of what we're adding is actually being removed. There's a whole section of that wing where the studio and the adjoining room is that actually exists. We're removing that so that we could add this new studio and then project the garage forward. So it's good that you mentioned that, because there was a lot of discussion about the sound. But fortunately, it's a very private use. It's not a recording studio for professional use. It's really his own private hobby, if you will. And other than that, I learned through this project that one of the downsides of doing an improvement on the coastal development is that you do remove your landscape or irrigation. It's an interesting concept we had to learn, but I understand that, and it's actually a good thing, I think. So, yeah, I'm here for questions if there are any. Otherwise, we appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioner Murphy, do you want to start?
I'm in favor of this process. I was struck, I think, very favorably by the fact, and I know it was for a different reason, but that the existing house is not being torn down and something started all over again. I like the idea that we're not, that we're doing a good job of recycling by keeping the same house there, and that the architects have been and the owners have been willing to work with that. And add, what is it, a little over 1,100 square feet. Of course, we're always concerned about the coastal bluffs, but it sounds from what I've heard from staff that that's pretty well covered. Also, I note that the HOA approved of this concept as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Yes, so I think I commented on this last time relative to my not wanting to see a mid-century modern house torn down, so I appreciate it now not being torn down. However, there's a few architectural features that I wouldn't do, but frankly, it's not my job to design the outside of this house. So I'm in full support of what's been proposed and have no other comments.
Thank you. Commissioner McCann.
I like the house. I like what they've done. I like the design. I find that it's meets all the height requirements and setback issues and so forth. So I'm in favor of the project. I'd just like to point out that maybe we should introduce this owner to the owner we approved about a month ago with his substantial studio. I think it's in the same neighborhood, so there's something going on there musically, but I'm in favor of the project.
Commissioner Claus.
This is one of the finest neighborhoods in the city. I know you're very familiar with it. And one of the things I really like about this is instead of just tearing down and starting from scratch, they're taking what they have and just making it a little bit better here and a little bit better there and a little bit nicer here. I like one thing here that I particularly liked. The attached garage. I think there was one other thing, but I mean, it is typical of what is done in this neighborhood, and it is always beautiful.
All right. I'm in favor of the project also. This letter from Kaufman and Associates was very helpful, actually, because with the other studio, I was concerned about the noise, and so at least, they have an expert in home theater design saying that the sound will be mitigated, so I'm happy about that, happy to see that. Also with the slope, obviously we're all worried about, slopes and erosion, so it's good that these properties are turning over and, getting newer landscaping and drought tolerant, and hopefully we won't have too much erosion during El Nino. So other than that, those are my comments. So anyone want to propose a motion? Mr. Murphy, maybe? You'd like to try it this time?
Yes, I would make a motion that we move this project forward.
Do you want to read the
Oh,
resolution for us?
yes, you want me to, okay. Okay, under subject, Coastal Development Permit CDP 15-0007 to allow expansion of an existing single-family dwelling and attached garage on a coastal bluff within the residential single-family 4 RSF-4 zoning district at 37 Monarch Bay Drive.
Thank you. Commissioner Murphy has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Claus has made a second. Please register your votes. And that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we will move on to old business, and there is no old business and new business. We have item 5. Hold on a second. For a sign program SPP 15-0004 to allow a sign program for Starbucks Coffee located at 34122 Pacific Coast Highway in the city's town center Lantern District. Is there a staff report on item 5?
Take it away, Evan.
Thank you. And we have the presentation on your screen. As you mentioned, a sign program permit for Starbucks on 2 properties, one of which is located in the Lantern District, the other just outside. So the aerial photograph, the vicinity map, the Starbucks site itself, the property that contains the building, fronts Pacific Coast Highway, as you can see within the circle, and the second subject property, which is under the same ownership and serves the Starbucks use, is located just inland on the other side of the San Marino Place alley. It's covered, completely devoted to surface parking. So, but before I get into the details of the sign program itself, a discussion about the triggers for a sign program, when it's required, what the intention of that type of permit is. There are a number of triggers. This particular project only meets one of them, but of course here it is for the sign program. Among those, the sign program will be required for new or upgraded shopping centers that have multiple tenants, where 3 or more signs are proposed, and that's the trigger for the subject program, for any new residential multifamily project, and then any that's deemed necessary, any sign proposal that's deemed necessary and appropriate to be heard by the Planning Commission. So again, our single trigger here is 3 or more proposed new signs for the property. Some site photos. All save for the one at the top left, are the Starbucks site, the property that fronts Pacific Coast Highway. Well, I'll go to the site plan in just a moment, but just to give you a lay of the land. Existing business, single story, again, 2 different properties. So our site plan, which shows both existing and proposed signage, But you'll may notice that the arrangement, the layout of the two properties is a little different than you perhaps just saw there in the photographs. In conjunction with the sign program permit, the applicant has been approved for something called an improvement permit by our Public Works Department, and to reorganize, redesign the interior of both lots. And the the goal there is to change up the flow of traffic in and out of the property. So at the moment, the drive-through, if I can get my mouse to work, well, just beneath the Starbucks logo there, that's the location of the drive-through window. Cars enter today from Pacific Coast Highway, right around where you see the A2 and A5, drive straight to the drive-through window and then back out to the alley and onto Granada Drive. Because of the close location of that drive-through teller, or drive-through window, I should say, coupled with the popularity, of course, of the business, cars oftentimes queue up onto Pacific Coast Highway and down the street, which can lead to congestion or just general conflicts with traffic, through traffic along Pacific Coast Highway. So the goal of the surface improvements is to take cars off of Pacific Coast Highway, now have them enter through the alley from Granada Drive, and then into the interior of the site, past the window, and then back out onto Granada Drive. The existing apron on Pacific Coast Highway would be narrowed, and it would become an exit only back onto the street. So again, removing that conflict, that queuing that currently occurs onto Pacific Coast Highway. But again, existing and proposed signage illustrated here, and I'll walk through both existing and proposed one at a time. So aerial photograph, Pacific Coast Highway. At the left of the photograph, you can see the alley, San Marino Place, and then our second surface parking lot fronting Granada Drive. So the first existing sign, roof-mounted and with 36 square feet. Another of the Starbucks logo, this faces Pacific Coast Highway, comes out to 7 square feet. And finally, the monument sign, facing Pacific Coast Highway, and the logo itself comprising 7 square feet. All existing signage on the building would remain exactly as is. There are no changes, save for sprucing up, you could say. The monument sign is an example of that. The sign remains the same, no change in height, form, etc., but it would be repainted, refurbished, etc. And finally, then, there are 10 existing Starbucks parking only signs attached to a wall along the rear, or at the rear of the Granada parking lot. And each of those is 3 square feet. So then on to the new signs. The site plan that I just showed you is at the top right of your screen, and those yellow stars indicate the general location of each of the proposed new signs. So A1 through A5, as they're identified in the sign program, there are 5 of them, of course, 3 square feet each, and these are wayfinding or directional signs guiding patrons either into the property, exiting from the property, or steering them toward the location of the drive-through, as in the case of the image here. They're all constructed of aluminum. They'd be painted black, and they'd be internally illuminated. Sign B, that is a height clearance bar and sign. The bar would be about a little under 11 feet in height, and then the sign portion of it, that's the 3 square feet, is the green rectangular clearance bar. And the purpose here, of course, is just to warn vehicles entering into the drive aisle of the maximum height of the building and other structures, and so giving them a chance to exit out onto PCH again before it is too late. Signs C through F, 4 of them. These are the menu boards, the ordering boards and signs for the drive aisle. The C is a preview board. It doesn't have a microphone or cameras or what have you. It just is, as the title suggests, lets you preview the potential items that you can order from Starbucks, which then leads you on to D and E, which do have a microphone for communication with the baristas inside the store, and also a view screen, so you can see the individual's face as you place your order. And then finally, F, a second ordering sign or a confirmation ordering or menu sign. And then finally, you drive on to the window where you pick up your wares. And the sizes vary from 7 square feet to a total of 43 square feet for D and E. These would be illuminated, of course, as you could imagine, with the screens and to allow vehicles to see who they're speaking to and how and what's written on the menu boards. Sign G is another directional sign, be located roughly in the center of that red circle in the photograph at the top of your screen. Again, as the flow of traffic changes, patrons are going to be steered into the entry from Granada and not from PCH as it is currently. So this sign would just do that, inform people that you need to turn down on Granada and then down into the alley and for entry into the site. And of course, that there's additional parking there as well. The sign would be 9 feet tall and providing a minimum clearance, the code required clearance of 7 feet. So only perhaps NBA players have to watch their heads. In summary, 13 existing signs totaling 80 square feet. We have 11 new signs totaling 94 square feet for a total of 175 square feet. Among standards for signs, 100 square feet is the maximum that would be permitted for a property unless you're approved for a sign program permit. So again, that figure can be exceeded, just as other design standards can be modified or tweaked for a sign program. That's, in fact, one of the core reasons to apply for a sign program. It allows flexibility for a property owner where location of sign is concerned, where maximum square footage for all signs on a property are concerned, for lighting, materials, etc., and with the ultimate goal of providing a unified statement for the property, making sure that signs gel with the existing architecture, with landscaping, with the circulation through a property, and so on. So it all becomes one cohesive design, and not just a scattered smattering of signs here and there. But again, the benefit to the owner is that other than for payment of having to go through the process, you're allowed, again, more flexibility in the design, location, and so forth of the signs that are proposed. So in summary, it's found that the signs will serve to guide patrons and facilitate orderly, safer movement into and out of the property, where, again, we have some conflicts at the moment. The number and types of signs are appropriate for the site without cluttering the property or the building on the property. The design and materials complement both existing and proposed development, and again, leading to that unified statement of colors and with architecture and landscaping and so on. And so that being said, as the project complies with the intent and the standards of the zoning code for sign programs, staff recommends for approval of the project as proposed. And finally, no letters of correspondence for this project. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Okay, Commissioner McCann?
I have one quick question. The existing monument sign has the Starbucks logo, and then it says drive-through, and it's right next to what's currently the entrance to the parking lot. Did you guys consider it if I know there's going to be some smaller exit-only signs, and it looks like a legend on the pavement as well, but did you consider like adding an arrow to that drive-through or something like that? I mean, might it be confusing, or you guys feel good about it?
We did talk about that, about putting possibly a new sign there or an arrow or just fitting something in that space. But ultimately, it was decided that the area is too small to fit a larger sign. Now, an arrow specifically, there's another sign, of course, just a few feet away, the pole-mounted sign that would steer people around the corner. So I think in the end, it was decided that would be the most visual sign, literally, to guide people around the corner, and so no changes are proposed to that monument sign.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Commissioner Claus?
one which would be, if I'm doing my math right, we're looking at 24 signs. We're talking about a cup of coffee. Okay, with 24 signs. I understand the way they're putting it together. It seems to work, but it just seems really an excessive amount of signs. Plus, they have their big, enormous sign to begin with. And I think, weren't they having some issues with the PCH and Amber getting through there?
Oh, coming from the other side of
Yeah.
Pacific Coast Highway?
Yeah, or either side.
Not to my knowledge. Really, that the primary concern was the queuing on Pacific Coast Highway entering the site.
Well, okay. And that, yeah. I don't even, that they seem to be fixing appropriately. I just don't like the idea of 24 signs.
It does seem like a
Or a
large
cup of
number.
coffee.
The site has some challenges, of course, with entry. So right off the bat, a good number of the signs are either to notify patrons that it's Starbucks exclusive parking, again, that's on the Granada lot, or to help patrons steer around from Pacific Coast Highway onto Granada and then into the interior of the property. So the whopping majority of that total number of signs are directional signs and wayfinding signs. And of those, they're all relatively small. So we did have a good number of discussions about the number and the location, It's felt this was the minimum number to effectively guide people to where they're supposed to be, to where available parking is located, and again, to get to the drive aisle and through the property without cluttering it as much as possible.
I'll just add that 10 of them, almost half of them are no parking signs on the back lot along the wall. Initially, we thought that might be a little excessive, although I can see potentially that in order to discourage the surrounding neighbors, visitors or whatever, to park in that lot, it's more effective when you drive into a particular parking spot and you see the sign right in front of you.
Yeah, okay.
If they're exceeding the maximum sign 100 square feet, why isn't this considered a variance?
The 100 square feet would be the maximum allowed without requiring the sign program permit. So with the sign program permit, you're able to exceed the 100 square feet and up to whatever is deemed to be appropriate, and without the need for a variance.
Okay. And then, can you show me again what the new proposal is for ingress and egress? And maybe from the aerial, because that way I get a better idea. Yeah, that one, or one of those.
So at the moment, vehicles, Pacific Coast Highway, again, to the left of your image here, you can see a vehicle entering from Pacific Coast Highway. Even a little bit of that queuing that I mentioned, as cars begin to stack up on the Pacific Coast Highway, because the distance to that window is all of about 40 or so feet, just a couple of cars worth of length before you're getting into the apron and then onto the street. So vehicles enter from Pacific Coast Highway, drive straight through, back into the alley, Granada, and then left or right. So the idea is to remove this design and instead steer folks from Pacific Coast Highway onto Granada, down into the alley, and into a new drive aisle, which would be right about where these parking spaces are located, snake your way through, and then back out onto a new apron, new exit, onto Granada.
Okay. Now it makes sense. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner McCann.
So I just want to make sure, I think we're approving the sign program or considering it, but I'm noticing there's 10 parking spaces along that easterly edge that are now, looks like, going to be replaced by 3. So does it create is it still adequately parked?
It is when you include both properties. Our zoning code allows you to locate commercial parking onto a residentially zoned property or otherwise off-site with approval of a minor conditional use permit. So in addition to the improvement permit from Public Works, the applicant also applied for and was approved for that minor conditional use permit. So the compliant parking for the property is now located on Granada, on that adjacent parking lot site. And the two are irrevocably tied to one another for all time. So for the Starbucks building, for the main property to satisfy its parking requirement, it has to use, and will forever use, that next lot, the Granada lot.
Okay, thank you. And then also on this aerial, I see a very mature palm tree in the vicinity of the new exit apron.
That's already been removed.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a little bit a little dated of a photograph.
Okay, thank you.
It matured.
Whether it's important to you or not, that just note that palm tree was a city tree, and it was relocated and reused in Capitol Beach.
So that was tied to the improvement permit
Yes, by Public Works.
portion. Who paid for that relocation?
I'm sure the applicant.
Now, if new Starbucks traffic is going to be queued up on Granada, how will the cars that are trying to get to the other businesses, is there enough room for a through lane?
Well, that's I don't know. It depends, of course, on the season, the number of cars and all that, but I can tell you there's going to be quite a bit more space, both on and off site, than before. Again, the current layout, you have just about 40, 50 feet worth of depth for those cars to stage and drive through. Now you'll not only have Granada, but the alley plus the interior aisle and on, so you're quite a bit more length, and all of it, or the whopping majority of it, off the streets. So you have to be quite the line for it, I would think, to fill up the alleyway, to fill up the drive aisle, all the way around to the window, and then back all the way out onto Granada. It's many, many, many times the number of cars that you currently can fit onto the property.
In fact, the current queuing areas allows for only 3 to 4 cars before you're in the street. The new one will be more than a dozen, not counting the alley.
And I'm just curious, who initiated this redesign of the site? Was that kind of applicant but pushed by the city, or?
Yes, actually, this was really important to our Public Works Department and city engineer. The queuing of traffic, of cars in the travel lane has been a real problem. We're hoping that this will alleviate that.
And then is the queue blocking the exit, or no? No, because they're going out on PCH, correct?
No, you would be required to stop there to keep it clear, and then when the next car on the other side clears, you'd go across.
Okay, so
if people
the
are-
exit, the queue, it will be blocking the exit.
You won't be allowed to queue and block the driveway.
Okay.
It's all queued back. It would have to be
Okay.
all the way to there to block the.
All right. And then the other thing is the H signs, H1 through H10. There's a grammatical error. Did they know that? It's H1 through H10. It's either owners, plural apostrophe, or single owner apostrophe S, owner's expense. I'm really uptight about stuff like that. But if they're going to be printing 10 of them, you'd think maybe they would want to get it right.
Most of those signs are actually existing against the back wall, so I
So
think
they're
that's...
already wrong. Okay.
We talked about that. Should they spell through correctly?
Yeah. There you go. Okay. All right. Any more questions?
We're not approving copy right now.
Commissioner Murphy?
I just have a question, because you've added some signs and you said some of them are going to be interlit. Is that correct? I would suppose that none of these will be a burden on the residents in terms of shining in their window or.
No. In fact, no signs, I should say, on the Granada lot will be illuminated. Those are all just, again, the placards. No, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Pardon me. There will be an exit and entry signage. Those are your A1 through 5 in your sign program. They'll be internally illuminated, but they're all of about 3 feet tall, and they're all about 3 square feet. So they're quite low, quite small, and the intent is just to guide people in. It's not to obviously flash. And at any rate, our zoning code requires that light not spill off-site. So if need to be adjustments, if they do turn out to be too bright, such that they're spilling off-site or offending owners, adjustments can be made to the lighting. But otherwise, those are the only 2 on the Granada lot. The others don't face residential properties or face walls, and so there's little chance that they would spill off-site or, I would think, be offensive to anybody.
No disco balls?
No, not that I'm aware
Okay.
of.
Thank you.
Okay. I will open the public hearing on the matter, and do we have? Yes, we do. Thank you. Spencer Regneri?
No, that's right.
Oh,
Good.
thank you.
Yes, I'm a representative here for Starbucks, and we've been working with staff to get this project through and put together. It took quite a few conversations, but we got it put together, and I think it'll help with the drive-through lane. But to address your one question about the monument sign, the drive-through portion copy will be removed from that monument sign to reduce any kind of confusion. So we'll just have the 2 exit onlys, and then the directional sign guiding people around the corner. But I'm here for any other questions. We've reviewed the conditions and are accepting those, and are here for appreciate your support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners. Anyone want to start? All right, Vice Chair.
Excuse me. I drive by here every morning, and I don't know how many times a week I have to swerve to get around somebody waiting for their coffee. So I'm really excited to see this change. And, in an era where you have to label bags that you can't, not to put it over your head because it's dangerous to your health, it appears as if this is appropriate amount of signage, given our day and age, if everybody needs direction. So I do understand the concern, but I think the amount of directional signs here will help with the confusion that'll occur for the people that are looking for their morning coffee. So I'm in full support. I'm looking forward to see this change and will support the project.
Commissioner McCann?
I agree with Vice Chair Nelson. I think it's really well thought through. Sounds like more related to the improvement permit, the improvement aspect, but changing the traffic flow, getting the queuing off PCH. I appreciate the applicant working with the city to make this improvement. I think it'll be much safer for everyone involved, and I'm very supportive of the project.
Commissioner Claus?
I think this is certainly a lot better than it was. This is a very huge structure. I know that because of how close I am to this, and I'm annoyed that they want an additional. What did I say? How many signs do they already have, and they want an additional 11? 13. They started with 13, and then they want an additional 11. Is that correct? I just think that's just a massive number. It appears that everyone else is massively supportive of this, so I'm not going to fuss about it too much. But it's for people who are in the neighborhood. Most people are drive-ins and then wander out. For those of us who live in the neighborhood, this is huge. And what they have done is semi-nice, but not really. I don't think they're taking a good, strong look at their neighborhood, which would be people who can get there by simply walking around and in. There's nothing that makes it easy for us. It's easy for you if you're driving. That being said, I'm not gonna fuss about it and not vote for it. I'd like to see them at least take a look at their surrounding neighborhood. I mean, it's big signs. Lots of people, as you people have been queued up in it, and it's been going on for a lot of years.
Commissioner Murphy?
I think there's something to be said that we should always be cognizant of the neighborhoods, and whenever any new plan is put into place. But it looks like because of the reconfiguration that's being done to make this a better flow, it demands more signs. Nobody likes to see big billboards everywhere, but that's not what these are. No. So I'm in favor.
Well, I agree with my fellow commissioners. It does seem like an excessive amount of signs, but the fact that it's changing direction, and I agree that in order to have people understand where they're supposed to go, you're going to need more signs to give that instruction for people. I am happy to see that the direction is changing. I think it'll be a lot more safer than it currently is. And so I'm also in favor of the program. So we need to then have a motion. And Vice Chair, I see you hitting your button there.
Yes, I'd love to make a motion to approve the resolution for the sign program permit SPP 15-004 to allow a sign program for Starbucks Coffee located at 34122 Pacific Coast Highway and 34162 Granada Drive.
Vice Chair Nelson has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner McCann has seconded. Please register your votes. And that motion passes 5-0. Well, that was the end of new business. We're on to staff reports.
Wasn't quick enough to think of one, so I don't have one.
So,
Nothing from me.
nothing, okay. John, nothing. Okay, so commissioner comments? Commissioner Claus? No. Commissioner McCann?
I just wanted to comment on the, the opening of Del Prado. Brad's not here to congratulate him, but, the whole thing looks great. It looks great. It seems to flow well. It's just really to be commended. I see city engineer around all the time, trying to work things out and make things better and stuff. So I just wanted to, comment on that.
Vice Chair?
I will echo the same comments. I actually stayed clear of when they turned on the other two-way traffic for the day, thinking it was going to be really dangerous, but it flows really nice, and it doesn't seem to be confusing whatsoever. Frankly, I went through there twice this weekend, and it was very pleasant, and they've done a great job just really making that part of town swell. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Murphy?
Did you say swell? Swell. Yeah, I will also make comment. Driving down today, I felt very peaceful for the first time in a long time driving Del Prado. And I actually could linger as I drove and look at the mediums and how beautiful they are with the trees and, the other foliage. And it just seems like there's this feeling now of everybody standing a little taller there, and there's a great future ahead. So, well done, well done.
I'd like to say the same thing. Every time I walk down there, I feel like I'm on vacation. I'm not in Dana Point anymore. So, please be sure that to say thank you to Matt Sinacore and Brad Fowler. They did a fantastic job, and the rest of the city, of course. So. I guess that's it. We'll move to adjournment. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be held on Monday, October 26th, 2015, beginning at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter, right here in the City Council chamber located at 33282 Golden Lantern, Suite 210, Dana Point, California. Have a good evening.